Something strange is happening right now, and almost nobody expected it, especially not women. For years, the running belief was simple: men can't be happy alone. Men need relationships. Men need companionship. Men need someone to keep them in line, push them to be better, give them purpose. That was the story society told. But the story is changing, slowly, quietly, and now loudly. Section 1, the shift no one saw coming. Men are stepping away from relationships not out of bitterness or fear, but because they've discovered something women never imagined. Peace feels really, really good, and for the first time in generations, men are choosing peace over relationships. Men who used to bend themselves in half trying to make things work. Men who used to ignore their own needs. Men who stayed loyal even when they were miserable. Those same men are now sitting in quiet apartments, cooking their own meals, working on their goals, playing their games, lifting at the gym, and realizing, damn, this feels better than the relationship I was in. And here's the part nobody expected. They're not just surviving without women, they're happier, more focused, more rested, more confident. This wasn't supposed to happen. Women always believed that loneliness would break men, that men would eventually come back begging for affection, that biological urges or emotional needs would drag them toward commitment again. But that prediction didn't age well, because modern men aren't lonely, they're not desperate, they're not searching for someone to complete them, they're rebuilding themselves. You can see it everywhere. Women on TikTok asking, where are all the good men? Or why don't men want to commit anymore? Meanwhile, those same men are sitting in their living rooms with a cold drink, watching their favorite show, enjoying a silence they never had before. And that's what changed everything. Men discovered that silence is not emptiness. Silence is healing. It's energy. It's mental clarity. It's the ability to breathe again without someone standing over your shoulder judging every breath. It's waking up on a Saturday and doing exactly what you want, without negotiation, without criticism, without being told you're not enough. It's the realization that life is better when you're not constantly being measured, corrected, or compared to some fantasy man in someone else's head. Men didn't walk away because they hate women. Men walked away because being alone started to feel better than being with someone who drained them. And women never thought that day would come. They never imagined a world where men would choose solitude over stress. But it's here, it's real, and it's just getting started. Section 2, the pressure that pushed men away. For years, men tolerated pressure that nobody talked about. Not because they were weak, but because they were committed. They kept trying, they kept adjusting, they kept believing that if they just worked harder, everything would finally calm down. But instead of things getting better, the pressure only grew. A lot of men reached a point where they realized something painful. No matter what I do, it's never enough. Men weren't walking away because of one big fight, or one dramatic moment, or one massive betrayal. Most men walked away because of the constant little things that added up over time. It was the non-stop criticism, the nitpicking, the second-guessing, the eye-rolling, the complaining, the you should have done it this way, the why can't you be more like, the tone, the attitude, the lack of appreciation. Men didn't leave because they didn't want love. They left because love started to feel like a performance review. And here's the thing, most women never understood about men. Men don't crumble from big challenges. Men crumble from being treated like they're never good enough. Give a man respect, peace, and appreciation, he'll move mountains. Give him constant critique, he'll eventually shut down. Men reached a point where they were tired of being judged for simply being themselves. Tired of defending their hobbies, tired of explaining their decisions, tired of being the emotional sponge for someone who never handled their own stress. And slowly men started to ask, why am I trying so hard to impress someone who doesn't even like me half the time? That's when the shift happened. Because the moment a man realizes he feels more accepted alone than he did in his relationship, he's gone. Maybe not physically right away, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, he's checked out. Many women thought men stayed no matter what, that men were too afraid to be alone, that men needed companionship to feel whole, that men would always come back even if they were treated badly. But that era is over. Modern men are learning that peace is priceless, and once a man tastes real peace, the kind where his shoulders drop, his breathing slows, and his mind finally relaxes, he'll protect it like gold, because for the first time in a long time, he's not stressed, he's not walking on eggshells, he's not overthinking every word, he's not trying to decode mixed signals, he's not being blamed for emotions he didn't create, he's not being judged for things he can't control, he's just living, and that simple feeling, being able to exist without pressure, is what made millions of men walk away from relationships that drained them. Women never thought men would choose themselves, never thought they'd set boundaries, never thought they'd stop chasing, never thought they'd stop tolerating disrespect, but men did, and the world looks completely different because of it. Section 3. Why peace beats partnership for modern men. There's a simple truth most people don't want to admit. Men don't leave relationships because they want to be alone. Men leave because they finally feel peace when they're alone. And once a man discovers that feeling, it changes his entire perspective on life. For generations, men were taught that relationships were the foundation of adulthood, that a man without a partner was somehow incomplete, that staying single meant you were immature, scared, or emotionally unavailable. But modern men learn something different. Being alone doesn't feel empty. Being with the wrong person does. When men step out of a stressful relationship, the contrast is shocking. The silence doesn't feel cold, it feels healing. The space doesn't feel lonely, it feels freeing. The time alone doesn't feel wasted, it feels like a chance to breathe again. Here's what peace actually looks like for a modern man. He wakes up and doesn't have to defend why he slept late. He goes to the gym without someone rolling their eyes. He spends money on his hobbies without being guilt-tripped. He visits his friends without starting a fight. He returns home and doesn't have to prepare himself for an argument. He cooks dinner the way he likes. He watches the shows he wants. He can simply exist without criticism. This isn't laziness. This isn't immaturity. This is the first time he's felt mentally safe in years. And that's the thing women didn't expect. Once a man's nervous system resets, he never wants to go back to chaos. Men realize that peace isn't boring, it's powerful, it's stability, it's control, it's clarity, it's the absence of unnecessary emotional turbulence. A peaceful environment turns men into better versions of themselves. They think clearer, they sleep deeper, they earn more, they feel healthier, life becomes lighter. What's ironic is that many women believed men were afraid of commitment, but the truth is more uncomfortable. Men aren't afraid of commitment. Men are afraid of losing their peace, because they finally know how good peace feels. Think about it. When a man is single, he can focus without interruption. He can work late without being accused of cheating. He can have female co-workers without being interrogated. He can take time for himself without it turning into an argument. He can choose his own priorities without conflict. And for the first time, men realize something shocking. Peace gives them more energy than love, not because love isn't meaningful, but because modern dating rarely offers love without chaos attached to it. Men are learning that a peaceful apartment is better than a stressful home. A quiet evening is better than a loud argument. A simple life is better than constant emotional work. And being alone is better than being under pressure. Women didn't think men would ever understand this, but they did. They finally did. And now the world looks completely different. Section 4. The moment men realized they were happier alone. There's a moment almost every man experiences, and it hits unexpectedly. Sometimes it happens during an argument that makes no sense. Sometimes during a quiet night on the couch after a breakup. Sometimes during a peaceful morning when no one is yelling, complaining, or demanding anything. It's the moment he suddenly thinks, I'm okay. Actually, I'm better. For years, men believed being alone was the worst possible outcome. Society told them solitude equals failure. Friends told them loneliness means weakness. Women said men can't function without them. But when men finally get their alone time, real alone time, not the occasional weekend, they discover something surprising. They're not broken. They're not depressed. They're not lost. They're calm. They're focused. They're in control. They're themselves again. And that realization is what changes everything. Men look around their quiet home and notice things they forgot about. Their own thoughts, their own preferences, their own goals, their own identity. Years of emotional labor, arguments over nothing, unrealistic expectations and constant pressure had buried all of that. Many men didn't even realize how much weight they were carrying until it finally fell off. It's like taking off a heavy backpack you've worn for so long you forgot it was there, and suddenly your entire body relaxes. Here's what that moment looks like for many men. He walks into his place and realizes it finally feels like home. He makes dinner exactly how he likes without judgment. He sets his own schedule. He spends money without fear. He works without guilt. He sleeps deeply for the first time in years. He laughs more. He relaxes more. He breathes easier. He's not tense. He's not anxious. He's not defending himself from invisible problems. He's not constantly trying to explain or prove himself. He's not in a relationship, and yet he's the happiest he's been in a long time. And once a man realizes this, it's nearly impossible for anyone to pull him back into a life filled with stress. This is the part many women underestimated. Men aren't returning to relationships out of desperation anymore. They're only returning if the relationship offers more peace than their solitude. The bar has changed. Men no longer care about relationship status. They care about mental health. They care about freedom. They care about respect. They care about peace. And peace is something they now know they can create by themselves. That's what scares a lot of women today. They believed men would always need them. but men discovered they needed something else more. A life that feels calm, steady, and predictable. A life where they're not being judged. A life where they're not being controlled. A life where they're not being drained. A life where they can just be men without apology. And once they taste that life, why would they ever go back? Section 5. Why modern relationships feel like a bad deal for men. A lot of women don't understand why men are stepping back from dating, relationships, and marriage. They assume men are scared, damaged, or emotionally unavailable. But the truth is much simpler. Men ran the numbers, and the math just doesn't add up anymore. Modern relationships demand more from men than ever before, while giving less in return, and men finally started noticing. Here's what most men are facing today. They're expected to provide, but not be appreciated for it. They're expected to listen, but never be heard. They're expected to fix problems, but blamed when they fail. They're expected to be emotionally available, but never emotional. They're expected to support her dreams, but sacrifice theirs. They're expected to be loyal, while she's still keeping her options open. It's not that men don't want connection, they do. They just don't want to enter a system where they feel like the only adult in the room. And the more men looked around, the more they realized something important. The relationship deal used to be balanced. Now it's lopsided. Let's break down the reality for modern men. 1. Men give more than they get. In previous generations, relationships were partnerships. Both sides contributed. Both sides relied on each other. Today, men are often expected to contribute financially, emotionally, physically, and logistically, while women talk endlessly about what they deserve. Men kept giving, but the gratitude disappeared, the reciprocity faded, the effort became one-sided. 2. Men carry blame for everything. Forgot to text back? He doesn't care. Working late? He must be cheating. Wants an hour of quiet? He's emotionally distant. Doesn't want drama? He's not a real man. Men are tired of being cast as the villain in every story. Men are punished for honesty. If a man says he's stressed, he's weak. If he sets boundaries, he's controlling. If he shares an opinion she doesn't like, he's toxic. If he says no, he's selfish. So men stop talking. Then women wonder why men seem quiet and distant. Because the moment men speak honestly, they get judged for it. 4. The dating market is unfair. Average men compete with every guy on Instagram, every guy on Tinder, every high-value man online, even if those dudes aren't attainable. Meanwhile, average women expect lifestyles they see influencers living. The result? Men feel like they're always auditioning, never accepted as they are. 5. The risk outweighs the reward. Divorce laws, false accusations, constant criticism, social shaming. Men see it all. They see what happened to their fathers, their brothers, their friends, and they ask themselves, why would I sign up for something where I lose more than I gain? That's why being alone feels safer. That's why being alone feels predictable. That's why being alone feels peaceful. It's not that men don't value women, it's that men no longer see relationships as the automatic path to happiness. Not when they've tasted how good life feels without constant pressure. Not when they've experienced what genuine peace feels like. Not when modern relationships offer stress instead of support. Men didn't change because they hate women. Men changed because the old deal disappeared. And until the deal becomes fair again, most men would rather stay single. Section 6. The freedom men never knew they were missing. One of the biggest reasons men are happier alone today is something incredibly simple: freedom. Not wild freedom, not reckless freedom, not go party every night freedom, just basic, peaceful, adult freedom. The kind of freedom where a man gets to live his life without someone micromanaging him, nagging him, questioning him, or trying to reshape him into who they want him to be. Most men never realized how little freedom they had in relationships until they finally got it back. They didn't notice how controlled they felt until no one was controlling them anymore. They didn't notice how much they were sacrificing until they stopped sacrificing everything. They didn't notice how drained they were until they finally had energy again. And the more freedom men experienced, the more they realized this is what life is supposed to feel like. Here's what freedom looks like for modern men. When freedom to have peace in their own home. No random arguments, no emotional outbursts, no walking on eggshells, no sudden accusations, just calm. A peaceful home is a man's heaven. 2. Freedom to focus on himself. For years men were told that focusing on themselves was selfish, but in solitude, they realize it's necessary. They can finally focus on their health, their finances, their business ideas, their skills, their hobbies, their passions, not because they're avoiding responsibility, but because they finally have room to breathe. 3. Freedom to spend money without guilt. Men aren't buying random things to impress anyone. They're not financially babysitting someone who spends emotionally. They're not apologizing for every purchase. Their money stays with them, and for many men, That alone feels like a weight off their shoulders. 4. Freedom to enjoy life without feeling judged. Men can play video games, hang out with friends, cook what they like, travel whenever they want, decorate their place how they want, sleep in, work late, rest when needed, and nobody treats it like a personal offense. 5. Freedom to grow without resistance. A lot of men felt held back in relationships. Their goals were mocked, their dreams were minimized, their ideas were dismissed. But when a man is alone, something crazy happens. He levels up, not because he's single, but because he's unstressed. He has clarity, he has motivation, he has time, he has drive. And for many men, that freedom becomes addictive. 6. Freedom from emotional chaos. Men don't hate emotions. Men hate unpredictable explosions, emotional manipulation, and being blamed for feelings they didn't cause. When men are alone, they finally understand. Peace is not boring. Peace is healing. The days feel lighter. The nights feel calmer. Life feels manageable again. And once a man tastes a life without emotional chaos, he never wants to give that up. This is the freedom women never thought men would value this much. But men do. They value it more than dates, more than romance, more than attention. Because for the first time in a long time, their life belongs to them again. Section 7. The new version of men women didn't expect. There's a new kind of man emerging today, and a lot of women don't know what to do with him. He's not angry, he's not bitter, he's not hostile, he's not anti-relationship, he's just done sacrificing himself. This new version of men looks different from the past. For years, men were taught to tolerate everything: disrespect, emotional chaos, double standards, unrealistic expectations, just to keep the peace. They were told real men stick it out, fix it, or try harder. But modern men have changed, and the change didn't come from podcasts or influencers. It came from experience. Men learned that loving someone shouldn't feel like losing yourself. They realized that being devoted shouldn't mean being drained. Being loyal shouldn't mean being disrespected. Being committed shouldn't mean carrying the whole relationship on their back. So now we're seeing a different kind of man. A man with boundaries. A man with standards. A man who's okay being alone. A man who only lets people into his life if they add peace, not chaos. Women weren't expecting this shift. They counted on men being unable to walk away. They believed men would always come back no matter how they were treated. They assumed men needed relationships to feel complete, but that assumption no longer matches reality, because here's the truth. Men aren't lonely, they're finally choosing peace. Men aren't scared, they're finally thinking clearly. Men aren't weak, they're finally protecting their mental health. This new breed of men isn't interested in drama or emotional roller coasters. He wants steadiness, respect, appreciation, and kindness. And if he doesn't get that, he's perfectly fine walking away, not out of anger, but out of maturity. He understands something women never thought he'd understand. His happiness matters too. He's not going back to a relationship where he feels like the enemy. He's not begging for attention from someone who treats him like an option. He's not proving his worth to someone who never sees it. He's not competing with other men for a woman who doesn't value him. He's focused on himself now, and not in a selfish way. He's building his career, he's stacking his money, he's rebuilding old friendships, he's exploring hobbies he abandoned, he's improving his health, he's strengthening his mindset. And ironically, all of this makes him more attractive, but also harder to get. Women now look around and say, where are all the good men? The answer is simple. They stopped volunteering for pain. They stopped dating women who drain them. They stopped accepting relationships that subtract more than they add. They stopped chasing people who don't appreciate them. They're not gone, they're just busy living better lives. Women never thought they'd see a generation of men who are content, truly content, with their own company. But that's exactly what's happening, and it's changing everything. Section 8. Why men aren't coming back to the old rules. There's a message modern society hasn't fully accepted yet. Men aren't going back, not to the old dating rules, not to the old expectations, not to the old relationship dynamics. For decades, relationships operated under one assumption. Men need relationships more than women do. Women believed it. Men believed it. Even culture reinforced it. But the world changed, and now millions of men have realized the opposite. They don't need a relationship to be fulfilled. They only want one if it genuinely improves their life. This shift is massive and irreversible, because once a man understands he can live, grow, succeed, and be happy on his own, he stops negotiating with conditions that drain him. Men used to tolerate disrespect because they feared being alone. Now they tolerate being alone because they refuse to accept disrespect. Here's the new reality most people aren't ready to admit. 1. Men won't trade peace for companionship. A relationship that brings stress isn't a relationship, it's a job. Men won't return to environments where they feel judged, attacked, or undervalued. If she brings chaos, he'll choose calm. If she brings drama, he'll choose silence. If she brings pressure, he'll choose freedom. 2. Men won't participate in emotional games. The mixed signals, the vague communication, the silent treatments, the manipulation, the jealousy traps. Men have checked out of these games. They've realized that anyone who wants them won't make them guess, and anyone who makes them guess doesn't value them. 3. Men won't be responsible for someone else's happiness. For years, men were expected to fix every emotional problem a woman had. Her stress became his fault. Her mood became his mission. Her insecurity became his responsibility. But men finally learned a hard truth. You can love someone deeply and still not be able to save them, and it's not your job to. 4. Men won't destroy themselves just to keep someone else. If loyalty means losing yourself, it's slavery, not commitment. If love means being criticized non-stop, it's not love. If being a man means suffering in silence, men aren't signing up. Men value themselves now, something society never encouraged them to do. 5. Men won't let fear control them anymore. Fear of being alone, fear of being judged, fear of being called a failure. Those fears don't work anymore. Men have lived alone, they've experienced the freedom, they've tasted the peace. They've seen their health improve, their finances grow, their confidence return. Why would they fear something that made their life better? Women assumed men would come back once they got lonely, but men didn't get lonely, they got stronger, they got happier, they got calmer, they got clearer. They became versions of themselves they didn't know existed. And here's the part that really stings for some women. The leverage they once had is gone. Men aren't desperate for affection. Men aren't dependent on relationships. Men aren't motivated by fear of being alone. Men are motivated by peace. And until relationships become places of peace again, men won't be returning to the old deal. Section 9. The happiness gap. Women didn't expect. There's a growing problem that almost nobody wants to talk about. A gap that keeps widening every year. Single men are getting happier. Single women are getting more miserable. This wasn't supposed to happen. Women assumed men would fall apart without them. They thought men needed constant emotional support, companionship, validation, intimacy. They believed men were too simple, too needy, too fragile to be alone. But the data and real life shows something very different. Men are thriving, women are struggling, and the reason is simple. Men can create fulfillment alone. Many women rely on relationships to feel fulfilled. That's why men walking away feels like a crisis to some women, not because they hate men, but because their worldview depended on men needing them. Let's break down why the happiness gap is growing. 1. Men build purpose through independence. Men find meaning in work, fitness, skill building, hobbies, discipline, projects, friendship, adventure. These things grow stronger in solitude. Men don't lose themselves when they're alone. They improve themselves. Meanwhile, many women were taught since childhood that relationships are their main source of joy. So when they don't have one, life feels empty. That's not judgment, it's cultural conditioning. 2. Men get more peace alone, women get more anxiety alone. When a man is single, his life becomes simpler. When many women are single, their life becomes heavier. Men enjoy the quiet, women often fear it. Men relax, women start overthinking. Men spread out on the couch, women ask themselves why no one chose them. Again, this isn't about superiority, it's about how society shaped expectations. 3. Men's value grows with age. Women feel theirs is expiring. As men age, they gain stability, money, status, confidence, skill, mental clarity, emotional maturity. As women age, they are often told their value declines if they're not partnered or married. That creates panic, not because of men, but because of the pressure society puts on them. 4. Women assumed men were waiting for them. Men assumed nothing. Women thought they had unlimited time to settle down because men will always want a partner. Men never had that belief. They just lived their lives. Now women look around at 28, 32, 36, 40 and say, where are all the good men? Meanwhile, the good men are at the gym, at work, on the couch, relaxing, playing games, building businesses, traveling, enjoying peace, not chasing chaos. They didn't disappear. Women just weren't looking in the right places. Or worse, they were looking at them and ignoring them. 5. Men are content. Women are confused. Women scroll through TikTok wondering why they're alone. Men scroll through YouTube tutorials enjoying the silence. Women worry about timelines. Men worry about tool sets and investment strategies. Women feel the pressure of the biological clock. Men feel the relief of self-growth. This happiness gap didn't appear out of nowhere. It's the natural outcome of two groups moving in opposite directions. Men move toward peace. Women move toward expectations that no real man can meet. And now the gap is visible. Men are building happy lives. Women are asking why they aren't part of them. Section 10. The truth women never expected. Men are finally choosing themselves. We've reached a point in history where something unbelievable, almost unthinkable has happened. Men are choosing themselves, not because they hate women, not because they've given up on love, not because they're damaged or bitter, but because for the first time, men realize something incredibly simple. A man's peace is more important than a partner. A man's mental health is more important than a relationship. A man's self-respect is more important than being chosen. Women never thought men would learn this. Never thought men would walk away from stress, manipulation, chaos, and pressure. Never thought men would put their own happiness before someone else's demands. But men did, and now everything is different. Men are no longer trapped by the fear of being alone. They've lived alone, and they liked it. They've thrived alone, and they grew stronger. They've succeeded alone and built better lives. So the old tactics no longer work. Shaming doesn't work. Guilt doesn't work. Fear doesn't work. Pressure doesn't work. Men aren't scared to be single. Men aren't desperate for a relationship. Men aren't emotionally collapsing without companionship. They're busy living, and women don't know how to handle this new reality. The men they ignored are now unavailable. The men they criticized now protect their peace. The men they took for granted now have boundaries. The men they assumed would chase them aren't chasing anybody. This is the correction nobody predicted. Men aren't afraid of commitment. They're afraid of losing their peace. And now that they've experienced a calm, steady, drama-free life, they'll never return to the old deal. The modern man is no longer begging for affection. He's not trying to fix someone he didn't break. He's not sacrificing himself to keep a relationship afloat. He's not accepting disrespect disguised as love. He's not proving his worth to anyone who can't see it. He knows exactly who he is. He knows exactly what he wants. He knows exactly what he won't tolerate. Most importantly, he knows he can live happily without a relationship. That knowledge is freedom. That freedom is confidence. And that confidence is what terrifies the people who depended on his insecurity. Men aren't walking away from women. They're walking away from chaos. They're walking away from disrespect. They're walking away from impossible expectations. They're walking away from emotional labor that isn't theirs. And because of that, the happiest men are not the ones in relationships. The happiest men are the ones who chose peace and refused to give it up. The final truth is this. Women never thought men would be happier alone, but they are. And they're not coming back to the old world. Men will only return to relationships that bring calm, respect, appreciation, partnership, and peace. Anything less, they'll stay single proudly, confidently, happily. Because once a man realizes his life is better alone, he never again fears loneliness. He only fears losing himself.